My date planned to humiliate me at my own restaurant. What she didn't know was that I owned the place. And before the night was over, she'd learn exactly what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. I thought I was the luckiest man alive when Khloe said yes to my dinner invitation. She was confident, radiant, with a laugh that could light up a room and a smile that made you believe in second chances. We'd met 3 weeks earlier at a charity event downtown, one of those fundraisers where everyone pretends to care about the cause but really just wants to network. She stood out immediately, not because she was trying to, but because she seemed genuinely interested when I spoke. No phone checking, no wandering eyes, just her, listening, asking questions about my thoughts on architecture to travel. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours. She told me about her marketing job, her dreams of traveling through Europe, how she'd always wanted to learn piano but never found the time. I told her about my love for quiet evenings, good books, and the kind of restaurants where the food tells a story. She leaned in when I spoke, her eyes bright with what I thought was genuine curiosity. "You're different," she'd said that night, touching my arm lightly. "Most guys just talk about themselves." I should have known then. People who tell you what you want to hear are often the most dangerous. For the next 2 weeks, we texted constantly. She'd send me photos of sunsets, ask my opinion on her outfit choices, share little moments from her day. "Thinking about you," she'd write with a heart emoji. I found myself doing the same, checking my phone between meetings, smiling at her messages like a teenager with his first crush. At 32, I dated enough to know infatuation from something real, or so I thought. When I finally asked her to dinner, suggesting we try somewhere nice, she lit up immediately. "Oh my God, yes! Where were you thinking?" There was an eagerness in her voice that I mistook for excitement about spending time together. "How about Lameon Vern?" I suggested casually. "I've heard incredible things about it." Her response came fast, too fast. "Perfect! I've been dying to go there. It's supposed to be amazing." That should have been my second warning. Everything changed when I stopped by her apartment building 3 days before our date. I'd planned to surprise her with coffee, maybe steal a few minutes together before she headed to work. As I approached the lobby, I heard her voice drifting through an open window on the second floor. She was on her phone, pacing, and her tone was nothing like the sweet, thoughtful woman I'd been texting. "I told that idiot to book a 5-star restaurant," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Tonight we'll eat our fill and sneak out after. Let him pay the bill. You should see his face. Priceless." The coffee cup in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My chest tightened. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm morning sun. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Her voice, sweet and mocking in equal measure, echoed in my head like a bad joke I wasn't supposed to hear. I stood there frozen, hidden behind a delivery truck, listening to her laugh, that same beautiful laugh I'd fallen for, now twisted into something cruel and calculated. She was talking about me, planning to humiliate me, treating our date like some kind of scam operation. Part of me wanted to storm up there and confront her immediately. The other part, the quieter, more dangerous part, wanted to see just how far she'd go. I'd been planning to surprise her with flowers that evening. Instead, I realized I was the punchline of her private comedy show. I stared at the coffee cup, then at my phone, the same device I was about to text her good morning. Something inside me shifted. Anger burned hot at first, a white-hot flash of betrayal that made my hand shake. But then it cooled into something far sharper, far more controlled. Clarity. She wanted a show. Fine. I'd give her one she'd never forget. Red flag 1. The enthusiasm for expensive places. Looking back, I should have noticed how her eyes lit up whenever I mentioned upscale venues. 2 weeks earlier, I'd casually mentioned trying a new bistro downtown, modest but charming. Her response had been lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's nice," she'd said, barely looking up from her phone. But when I mentioned Lameon Vern, her entire demeanor changed. She sat up straighter, leaned forward, started asking detailed questions. "Is it really as fancy as they say? I've seen the photos on Instagram. It looks incredible." At the time, I thought she appreciated fine dining. Now, I realized she was calculating. I'd brushed it off, telling myself she just had good taste. Red flag 2, the friend she wanted to bring. 3 days before our date, Khloe texted me, "Hey, I know this is our thing, but Sarah, my best friend, has been having the worst week. Would you mind terribly if she joined us? Just for dinner. I promise we'll make it fun." The message came with a sad face emoji and a photo of her pouting. How could I say no? I wanted to be the understanding guy, the one who cared about her friendships. "Of course," I'd replied, "the more the merrier." Her response, "You're literally the best. She's going to love you." What I didn't realize then was that Sarah wasn't coming for support. She was coming as an accomplice. At the time, I thought I was being generous. Now I knew I was being played. Red flag 3, the photo obsession. Every time we'd met for coffee or a quick lunch, Khloe had her phone out constantly. "Just one pic," she'd say, angling for the perfect shot. The background always mattered more than my face in the frame. Designer coffee shops, upscale boutiques, anywhere with a logo worth showing off. "You look so good in this light," she'd coo, but her camera was always pointed at the ambiance, not at me. I appeared in her photos like an accessory, slightly out of focus, while the brand name stood sharp and clear. I'd rationalized it as modern dating. Everyone documents everything now. But the pattern was there, screaming at me to pay attention. She wasn't collecting memories. She was collecting proof of a lifestyle. Red flag 4, the questions about money. Khloe never asked directly, but she probed constantly. "So, what exactly do you do?" she'd asked on our second coffee date. When I'd given her a vague answer about hospitality and family business, she'd pressed further. "That's interesting. Do you, manage a hotel or something?" "Something like that," I'd said, deliberately keeping it unclear. Her smile had tightened just slightly. Frustration masked as curiosity. She wanted numbers, specifics, ammunition for whatever calculation she was running in her head. When I wouldn't give her details, she changed tactics, commenting on my watch, my clothes, the car I drove. "You're so modest," she'd said, touching my hand. "I bet you're secretly loaded and just don't want to brag about it." I'd laughed it off. Now I realized she'd been investigating, trying to assess whether I was worth the effort of her elaborate scheme. The tipping point. That morning, standing outside her building with cold coffee in my hand, everything crystallized. The pieces I'd ignored, the warnings I'd dismissed, all came together in one devastating moment of clarity. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in what she thought I could provide. And the restaurant she'd chosen, the crown jewel she wanted to scam, it was mine. Most people saw me as the quiet type, polite, reserved, a man who preferred listening over speaking. That's mostly true. I don't chase drama, and I don't flaunt wealth. My family owns a chain of luxury restaurants across the city, including Lameon Vern, our flagship establishment. But I've never felt the need to announce it. I live simply, drive an average car, wear modest clothes, and let people treat me as just another ordinary guy. That's exactly why Khloe had chosen me. She thought I was an easy mark, someone desperate enough to impress her, naive enough to fall for her act. She'd sized me up and decided I was weak. She was about to learn otherwise. I walked back to my car slowly, the coffee now forgotten in a trash bin. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Davis, the manager of Lameon Vern and my father's most trusted associate for over 20 years. He picked up on the first ring, as he always did. "Good morning, sir. Is everything all right?" Yes, Davis, I said, my voice calm, controlled. But I need your help setting up a situation. A situation, sir. I'd like to run a small experiment. It involves a dinner reservation tomorrow night. I'll send you the details. Think of it as a test of character, not mine, but someone else's. Davis chuckled softly, a sound that told me he understood immediately. Understood. Shall I prepare the private security as well? Not yet, I said, watching a couple walk past, oblivious to the conversation that would change everything. But I want the local police informed in advance. Tell them we suspect a potential case of theft of service. I want them nearby, ready, but unseen. This must look completely natural. He hesitated for just a moment. Of course, sir. May I ask, what did they do? Nothing yet, I replied, glancing at my reflection in my car window. But they will. The next day moved in slow motion. I went through my regular routine, meetings, emails, a workout at the gym, but my mind was elsewhere. I was choreographing every detail of what would happen that evening. Davis called me 3 times with updates. The table was reserved, corner position with optimal camera angles. The staff had been briefed, act normal, treat me like any other customer. The police had been notified. 2 plainclothes officers would be stationed in the parking lot. Everything's ready, Davis confirmed during our final call. Security's on standby. We've also set up discreet microphones at your table per your request. Good, I said. Make sure they're recording from the moment she arrives. You're certain about this, sir? There was concern in his voice, the kind a father figure shows when he worries you might be making an emotional decision. I smiled faintly, staring out my office window at the city below. Davis, sometimes people need to see the mirror held up to their own reflection. Tonight, that's all I'm doing. When Khloe texted me that afternoon, "Can't wait for tonight, don't be late," I could almost hear the false sweetness dripping from each word. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was curious. I wanted to see how far she'd go when she thought she was in control. At 6:30, I arrived at Lameon Vern dressed in a dark suit, nothing flashy, but well-tailored enough to fit the venue. I walked through the marble lobby like any other customer. The staff greeted me politely, professionally, none of them betraying the slightest hint that they knew who I was. Davis met me in the lounge area, clipboard in hand, his expression perfectly neutral, but his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Everything's ready," he said quietly. "Security's on standby. Police officers are stationed in the parking lot, plainclothes. Microphones are live." "Good," I said, adjusting my cufflinks. "Make sure they're recording from the moment she arrives." He nodded once, then melted back into the professional landscape of the restaurant, just another manager ensuring everything ran smoothly. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, neat, and waited. The ice clinked softly in my glass. The low murmur of conversation filled the space. Candlelight reflected off polished surfaces. Everything was perfect, expensive, elegant, exactly the kind of place designed to make people feel special. At exactly 7 o'clock, the front doors opened. Khloe walked in, and she wasn't alone. Sarah strutted beside her, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They looked around the marble hall with the awe of tourists, whispering to each other, probably imagining how many likes their next post would get. Khloe's eyes scanned the room until they found me. Her face lit up with that practiced smile. "Alexander, sorry we're a tiny bit late." I stood to greet them, pretending surprise at Sarah's presence, even though I'd known she'd be there. "Oh, you brought a friend." Khloe waved her hand dismissively, her bracelets jangling. "Yeah, I hope you don't mind. Sarah and I haven't had a proper girls' night in ages." "Of course not," I said, smiling warmly. "The more the merrier." Behind her, I caught Davis's discreet nod from across the room, the signal that the cameras and recorders were live. Every word from this moment forward would be captured, every movement documented.
As we took our seats at the corner table, I watched Khloe's eyes flicker across the menu. She didn't even pretend to consider the moderately priced options. Her finger traced down to the bottom of the page, lingering on the most expensive dishes like she was shopping for weapons. She looked up, her eyes bright with what I now recognized as greed masked as enthusiasm. "Let's get the lobster, the steak, and that bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015. You don't mind, do you?" The Chateau Margaux cost $1,200 a bottle. "Not at all," I replied smoothly. "Order whatever makes you happy." Her smile widened, utterly convinced I was the fool she'd been mocking 24 hours earlier. Sarah giggled, covering her mouth with her napkin. Under the table, I saw them exchange a quick glance, the kind of silent communication that screamed, "We're getting away with it." What they didn't know was that every waiter, every sommelier, even the valet outside knew exactly who I was, and they were all watching. Dinner began like a performance. Khloe was the star, Sarah the sidekick, and me the fool with the wallet. At least that's what they thought. The lobster arrived on silver platters, garnished with edible gold leaf. The steak came precisely medium rare, accompanied by truffle butter that cost more per ounce than most restaurants charge for an entire meal. Khloe leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, her voice rising just enough for nearby tables to hear her laugh. To her, this was validation, power, proof that she could manipulate any man into giving her what she wanted. To me, it was evidence. "You really didn't have to go all out like this," she said sweetly between bites, that same smirk I'd seen when she whispered into her phone. "You're spoiling us." "It's my pleasure," I said, refilling her wine glass. The Chateau Margaux caught the candlelight, deep red and worth every penny she thought I was wasting.
Across the table, Sarah whispered something under her breath. Khloe laughed, covering her mouth with her napkin. I caught fragments. After dessert, back door, quick. I almost admired the confidence. Almost. "Would you two like dessert?" I asked, feigning innocence. Khloe's eyes lit up like a child's on Christmas morning. "Of course! What do you recommend?" "Try the gold leaf chocolate soufflé," I said, signaling the waiter with a subtle gesture. "It's the house special." They didn't notice Davis in the corner, subtly checking his watch. The silent countdown to Act Two had begun. As the soufflé arrived, presented on crystal plates with raspberry Kool-Aid drizzled in perfect spirals, Khloe pulled out her phone immediately. She snapped photos from every angle, making sure the restaurant's logo appeared clearly in the background. Her caption was probably already forming in her mind. "Another 5-star night. When Bay spoils you. Luxury life." The flash from her phone camera illuminated her face, and for a moment I saw her clearly. Not the woman I thought she was, but the person she'd always been. Someone who valued appearances over authenticity. Someone who saw people as props in her carefully curated life. When the plates were finally cleared, Khloe pushed back her chair and flashed a perfect smile, the kind that had fooled me weeks ago. "Babe," she cooed, "Sarah and I are just going to the restroom to fix our makeup. Be right back." They grabbed their purses, expensive designer bags that probably cost more than the meal they were about to skip out on, and strutted toward the hallway with the confidence of people who thought they'd already won. I watched them go. Two predators who thought they were hunting prey, not realizing they'd walked into a trap. The moment they disappeared from view, Davis approached quietly, his footsteps silent on the carpeted floor. "They've just slipped past the restroom corridor," he murmured, leaning close, "headed for the service exit." "Let them go," I said softly, taking a slow sip of wine. "Give them 5 minutes." He nodded and stepped away, speaking quietly into his radio. I leaned back in my chair,
letting the soft jazz from the speakers fill the space around me. My reflection shimmered in the wine glass, calm, steady, unmoved. The staff glanced over occasionally, uncertain how someone could look so composed while being abandoned. Other diners whispered, probably pitying the man left alone at the table. But this wasn't humiliation. It was documentation. I let 10 full minutes pass, each second measured and deliberate. Then I caught Davis's eye across the room and gave him a single nod. Time. He lifted his radio and spoke a few quiet words I couldn't hear. Outside, in the parking lot shadows, 2 plainclothes officers stepped forward, blocking Khloe and Sarah just as they reached for their car doors. What happened next would unfold exactly as I had planned. But inside the restaurant, I remained still, fingers tapping the table softly in rhythm with the background music. A waiter approached nervously, young, probably wondering if he should intervene. "Sir, would you like me to bring the check?" I smiled faintly, mysteriously. "Not yet. I think my guests will be returning shortly." And right on cue, like a scene rehearsed 1,000 times, the glass doors at the front entrance swung open. They were back. Khloe's hair was disheveled, her perfect makeup now smudged. Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered frantically about police and misunderstandings. Both of them looked like they'd seen a ghost. I didn't rise from my seat. I didn't say a word. I simply turned my gaze toward them, calm as a man finishing a pleasant meal in peace, and waited for them to realize that the game had changed. The moment they stepped back inside, every head in the restaurant turned. The moment they stepped back inside the restaurant, every head turned. Khloe's lipstick was smudged across her cheek. Sarah's heels clicked unevenly on the marble floor, one strap broken. The confident strut they'd displayed an hour earlier was gone, replaced by shaky breaths and the unmistakable sheen of panic. Behind them, 2 uniformed security officers and a police sergeant followed at a measured distance, their presence transforming the elegant dining room into a courtroom. "Ladies," the officer said firmly, his voice cutting through the soft jazz music, "you're being questioned in connection with an incident of theft of service. You attempted to leave without paying for your meal. That's considered a criminal offense under state law." Khloe's eyes widened, her face draining of color. "What? No, no, no. We were just stepping out for a minute. We were coming back. I swear." "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, his tone professional but unyielding, "we'll handle explanations later. For now, please return to your table." She stumbled forward, her expensive heels catching on the carpet.
Her voice cracked as she turned to me, desperation replacing the sweetness from earlier. "Please, Alex, please tell them it's a mistake. You know I wasn't trying to leave. Tell them!" I looked up slowly from my wine glass, my expression carefully neutral. "I told you earlier tonight I wouldn't dream of moving." Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed immediately by confusion. Her mouth opened, then closed. The pieces weren't quite fitting together yet. "Sir," one of the security staff addressed me respectfully, taking a step forward. "Mr. Davis told us you're the—" "Thank you, officer," Davis interrupted smoothly, emerging from the shadows like a director stepping onto stage. He turned to face the dining room, his voice calm but commanding enough that every conversation stopped mid-sentence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Alexander Vern, the owner of Lameon Vern, the establishment where these 2 guests attempted to dine and dash." The words hung in the air like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Silverware clinked against plates as people froze mid-bite. A woman at the next table actually dropped her napkin. Khloe's face went from pale to gray. "The
Owner? She stammered, her voice barely audible over the sudden murmur of shocked conversation. You're the owner? I looked at her, my expression still unreadable, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. You seemed so certain I was just another fool trying to impress you, I said quietly. I thought it would be interesting to let you believe it. Her hands trembled. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. It was supposed to be a joke, a stupid joke. A joke, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Interesting sense of humor. Davis stepped forward, placing a leather folder on the table with deliberate care. The sound of it hitting the polished wood seemed louder than it should have been. He opened it slowly, revealing the itemized bill printed on heavy cream paper, each line a record of their greed. Total, Davis read aloud, his finger tracing down the page, $1,542.80, charged under the name of Miss Khloe Moore. Sarah made a small choking sound. Khloe swayed slightly, the reality settling over her like ice water. The police sergeant stepped closer, his boots squeaking slightly on the marble. Ma'am, you'll need to settle the balance or we'll have to proceed with a formal report and possible charges. This is your opportunity to resolve it privately. Sarah began crying softly, her mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. I don't have that kind of money, she whispered. Khloe, you said this would work. You promised this would work. Khloe's face turned from gray to white, all the blood draining away as the full weight of consequences crashed down. The laughter was gone. The games were over. The fake confidence that had carried her through the evening evaporated, leaving behind only raw, desperate fear. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking as she looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much younger, much more vulnerable. Please, Alex, can't you help me? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can't you just let this go? The room went completely silent. Even the jazz had stopped. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what I would do. I rose slowly from my seat, straightened my jacket with deliberate care, and looked her directly in the eyes. When I spoke, my voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made the words cut deeper. Help you? I said. Khloe, I tried to do that when I asked you out, when I treated you with respect, when I believed you were the kind of woman who valued sincerity over spectacle, when I thought you might actually be interested in knowing me, not just using me. I paused, letting each word land. You had your chance. Her lip quivered. Tears began streaming down her face, mixing with the smudged makeup. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did, I cut in, my voice still quiet but firm as steel. You meant every word you said on that phone call. You planned to humiliate me, to use me, to laugh about it later with your friend. You chose every step of this path, Khloe. You ordered the lobster, the steak, the $1,200 wine. You took the photos for Instagram. You snuck out the back door. Every single choice was yours. I gestured to the officer standing patiently behind her. But tonight, I continued, tonight, I'm the punchline you never saw coming. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. The weight of shame finally crushed her carefully constructed posture. She looked smaller somehow, deflated, like someone had pulled the air out of her confidence and left only the hollow shell behind. The dining hall remained silent. All eyes were fixed on her. Some faces showed pity. Others showed disgust.
A few showed the kind of grim satisfaction people feel when they see karma working in real time. I turned to Davis and nodded.
Make sure they pay for everything they ordered, down to the last crumb. And please send a copy of the CCTV footage to the local station in case they forget to settle up again." "Yes, sir," Davis replied, his voice carrying just a hint of satisfaction. Khloe's voice cracked, high and desperate. "Please, Alex, I can't. I don't have enough cash on me. My credit card, it's almost maxed." "Then use your credit card," I said, picking up my coat from the chair. "Or your pride, whichever's worth more to you." For a long, heavy moment, she just stood there trembling, tears flowing freely now. Sarah had collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands, her sobs echoing through the quiet restaurant. Finally, with shaky hands that could barely grip the leather, Khloe pulled out her wallet and slid her credit card across the table. It hit the bill folder with a small plastic sound that seemed to echo. Sarah followed, fumbling through her designer purse, pulling out her card with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. The payment terminal beeped softly as Davis processed the transactions. Once, twice. The receipt printer whirred, spitting out proof of the most expensive lesson they'd ever learn. As the machine printed the final receipt, I picked up my coat and draped it over my arm. I'd waited long enough. Before walking away, I turned back one last time. "Consider this a lesson, Khloe," I said quietly, my voice carrying across the silent room. "You wanted a 5-star dinner. You wanted the photos, the experience, the story to tell. Congratulations, now you've paid for one." I walked toward the exit, my footsteps measured and calm. Behind me, I could hear Khloe's quiet crying, Sarah's whispered apologies, and the murmur of the other diners resuming their meals with renewed stories to tell. Davis fell into step beside me as I reached the door. "Well handled, sir," he murmured. "Thank you, Davis," I replied. "Make sure they actually complete the payment before they leave." "And Davis?" "Yes, sir." "Ban them, permanently, from all our locations." "With pleasure, sir." I stepped out into the cool night air, breathing deeply for the first time in hours. Behind those glass walls, Khloe and Sarah were still huddled at the payment counter, pale and trembling as they signed the $1,500 bill that would haunt them far longer than the meal itself. But my part in their story was over. In the age of social media, there's no such thing as a private scandal. By the time I got home that night, the damage was already spreading like wildfire. The restaurant staff group chat had leaked a few photos, nothing malicious, just images that told the story. 2 overdressed women in visible panic, police standing in the background, receipts on the table showing amounts that made people gasp. Within hours, 5-star freeloader was trending locally on Twitter. Someone had posted, "Imagine trying to dine and dash from the owner himself. The audacity!" The tweet had been retweeted thousands of times. The comments flooded in like a tsunami. "That's what you get for being fake. She used the wrong guy. Can't scam the boss, sweetheart. I bet she's crying into her designer purse right now. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. This is chef's kiss karma." Khloe's Instagram, once filled with flawless selfies and wine glasses positioned just so, went dark almost immediately. Her last post, captioned "Dinner with Someone Special," had become a battlefield of laughing emojis and sarcastic tags. How'd that work out for you? Someone special? You mean someone who owned the restaurant? This aged like fine milk. Sarah deleted her account entirely within 12 hours. Khloe tried to go private, but the screenshots were already everywhere. Her perfectly curated life was now evidence of everything shallow and fake. I didn't comment. I didn't like any posts. I didn't feed the fire. I didn't need to. The world had already done that for me. A few days later, Mr. Davis called me with an update I hadn't asked for, but somehow knew was coming. "Sir, I thought you should know. Miss Moore has been calling the restaurant multiple times. She's asking, rather desperately, if we could have the photos taken down. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports, but I set down my pen. What did you tell her? I informed her that the restaurant didn't release any photos, sir, which is true. We simply cannot control what our staff does on their personal time, nor can we control social media. Good, I said. If she calls again, tell her it wasn't us. Tell her it was Karma's PR team. I could hear the smile in Davis's voice. With pleasure, sir. The fallout continued for weeks. Rumor had it that Khloe quit her marketing job soon after. Whether she was fired or left voluntarily, no one seemed to know.
Her so-called influencer friends ghosted her, afraid the scandal might stick to them like tar. In their world, association with public humiliation was worse than any crime. She moved to another city quietly, or so I heard through mutual acquaintances. No more five-star dinners, no more luxury check-ins, no more carefully angled photos with designer logos in the background. Just silence. Sarah, I never heard about again. She vanished from our social circles completely, as if she'd never existed. As for me, I kept running Lameon Vern the same way I always had. Discreet, efficient, elegant. The restaurant's reputation, if anything, got stronger. People loved the story, the underdog owner who'd quietly outmaneuvered the scammers. We saw a 15% increase in reservations over the next month, all from people who wanted to dine at that place from the story. I never capitalized on it publicly, never gave interviews, never confirmed or denied the details when asked. I let the story exist in the world the way all good stories do, with just enough truth to be believed and just enough mystery to stay interesting. Sometimes, when I pass by that same corner table, I still remember that night, the moment she realized who I really was. Not the fool she'd imagined, but the one holding the script all along. It's been almost a year now since that evening. I'm sitting in my office on the top floor of our flagship restaurant, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun sets. The quarterly reports show we're doing better than ever. 3 new locations opened, staff retention at an all-time high, customer satisfaction scores that make our competitors jealous. But the numbers aren't what I think about when I reflect on that night. I think about how easy it is to misjudge people. How Khloe looked at me and saw only what she wanted to see. A mark, a fool, someone whose kindness could be mistaken for weakness. She never bothered to look deeper, to ask real questions, to see past the modest car and simple clothes to the person underneath. And in a way, I did the same thing. I looked at her confidence and charm and assumed it came from somewhere authentic. I saw what I wanted to see too. We were both wrong, but only one of us paid for it. I dated casually after that, nothing serious. A few coffee dates, some dinners at places where I wasn't the owner. I was more careful now, more observant. I watched how women treated servers, how they spoke about other people when they thought no one important was listening. Character reveals itself in small moments, not grand gestures. About 6 months ago, I met someone different, Elena. She's a teacher, works with kids who have learning disabilities. She drives a beat-up Honda, wears jeans more often than dresses, and has never once asked where I want to take her to dinner. When I told her I owned restaurants, she said, "That's cool. Do you like it?" Not, "Which ones?" Not, "Can we go?" Just genuine curiosity about whether I enjoyed my work. We've been taking it slow. She met my family last month. My mother adores her. My father respects her. Davis approves, which somehow matters more than I expected. I learned something from that night with Khloe, something I'm still learning. The right person doesn't need to be impressed. They don't need 5-star dinners or expensive wine or proof of your worth displayed on social media. The right person sees you, really sees you, and chooses to stay not because of what you can provide, but because of who you are. Khloe wanted a fairy tale, but she wanted it for the photos, not the experience.
She wanted the appearance of luxury without understanding what luxury actually means. Real luxury isn't gold leaf on chocolate souffle. It's finding someone who makes you feel wealthy in ways that have nothing to do with money. I don't know where Khloe is now. I don't follow up on the rumors or search for her online. That chapter closed the moment she walked out of my restaurant, and I have no interest in reopening it. But I hope, somewhere, she learned something. I hope she realized that people aren't props in your Instagram story, that kindness isn't weakness, that the quiet guy in the modest car might surprise you if you bother to look beyond the surface. And I hope she learned that karma doesn't always arrive loud and dramatic. Sometimes it arrives quietly, dressed in a dark suit, holding the script you didn't know you were performing in. As for me, I learned to trust my instincts more, to pay attention to red flags instead of explaining them away, to understand that someone who only values what you can give them will never value who you are. The right person doesn't need convincing. They don't need expensive meals or grand gestures to see your worth. They see it naturally, the way you see the stars once your eyes adjust to darkness. Would I do anything differently? No. That night needed to happen exactly the way it did. Khloe needed to face consequences.
I needed to stop being so naive. The universe needed to demonstrate that sometimes justice arrives precisely when and how it should. If you've ever been used, manipulated, or made to feel like your kindness was weakness, remember this. The person who underestimates you is giving you the greatest advantage. They show you exactly who they are, while assuming you can't see it. And when the moment comes, when you have the chance to reveal what you've known all along, that moment becomes more than justice. It becomes poetry. Khloe wanted a 5-star experience. She got one, just not the kind she expected. And honestly, that's the best ending this story could have had.